Welcome to Towel Capes. I'm Cody Nestor. He's Todd Heel.
What's up, guys?
After 36 years, the juice is loose again. But does Beetlejuice Beetlejuice deserve its spot in the afterlife, or should it go straight to sandworm hell? We'll discuss. But first, today's review is being brought to you by Denny's Say It 3 Times Slam. The breakfast so nice, you'll say it thrice. The Denny's Say It 3 Times Slam comes with 3 silver dollar chocolate chip pancakes topped with vanilla cream, chocolate sauce, chocolate chips, and green sprinkles. Served with 3 eggs cooked your way and 3 strips of crispy bacon. After eating the Denny's Say It 3 Times Slam, you're guaranteed to be repeating phrases over and over. Phrases such as, make this pain stop, someone please help me, where's the ambulance, and many more. See you at Denny's, folks. Todd, what did you think the story was?
So we're reintroduced to the Dietz clan here. We've got our daughter Lydia, her mother Delia, and a new character Astrid, which is Lydia's daughter. And they're all brought back together with the unfortunate passing of Charles Dietz. So they have to return back to the old family homestead, but strange things are afoot both in the afterlife and in the real world. With more characters than you can shake a crucifix at, and a plot that does none of them any justice. This is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I think that's an apt description. So I said this to somebody last night. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is the epitome, it's the definition textbook of mid. This is just a mid,
I would agree,
forgettable, kind of bland sequel made far too long after the original. And boy, we've seen that numerous times. It has nothing new really to say, nothing interesting to say, and doesn't add really anything to the universe as a whole.
No, not really.
I mean, and like you said, it's overstuffed with characters, and it's most of those performances by those characters are average to mediocre performances,
right.
Plot threads that go absolutely nowhere, that just feel like, well, it's this point in the film, let's close the chapter on this book. Oh, it's the end of the film, bop, let's close that. Just because it's got to end here, we got a tight hour 45. We got to get in.
Got to click, got to hum.
Yeah, and if you're at home and if you're wondering if Michael Keaton's 17 minutes of screen time, a la his first appearance in the original Beetlejuice, here he has about 17 minutes of film time here. If that saves the film, it does not.
No,
it does not. It does not. Is it bad? Is it out and out horrible? No. Is it good? No. It's not good. It's one of those unfortunate lives right in that middle ground. Like I said, it's boring and forgettable. The first hour is really pretty boring. I was not really interested at all. It kind of meanders on, and then you get the last 45 minutes, and it's kind of broken up into about 40 minutes of like real kooky, weird, supernatural stuff in the land of the dead, which is all good, which is some of the best parts of the original.
Yeah.
And then you get this like 5 minutes rust ending, like, oh, we got to get out of here. It's time to go.
Right.
40 minutes of like going through that and some bad jokes, but some cool, kooky, creepy, supernatural, good practical effects, makeup effects stuff. And it's like, oh boy, well, we got to wrap this up.
Hey,
fellas.
look at here.
Close it up and hit the credits. Like, it's really how it kind of just goes through and really how it kind of feels. Let's talk cast, I guess, Todd, here, and then move through the story a bit. Winona Ryder, she's back as Lydia Dietz. As we know from the first film, she can see and talk to ghosts. So Lydia is now working on a ghost hunting show called Lydia Dietz's Ghost House. One of those like cheapo like ghost hunting shows you'd see on like A&E or something, like Ghost Hunters or some bullshit. She's estranged from her daughter Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega. She now has a good relationship with Catherine O'Hara's Delia from the first film, and then she's dating the film's most annoying character, Rory, played by Justin Theroux. And I know his character is supposed to be annoying, like that's his whole character, but this goes into like he's just actually annoying.
He's just annoying, period.
He's just, his character's no longer annoying. Him, anytime he's on screen, is just annoying and grating to me. We got kind of our big 3 leading ladies here, Jenna Ortega, Winona Ryder back, and Catherine O'Hara. What did you think of the big 3 leading ladies here, Todd, and kind of where you find them and what they've been given?
I think given what they were given kind of with this script and in this film, I think they kind of acclimated themselves pretty good. I mean, Catherine O'Hara is just so crazy over the top of this character of Delia. She's just out there. It's
Right.
just she's weird. And you know, I think Winona Ryder as an older Lydia, I think does a good job. And you know, our new character here, Jenna Ortega as Astrid, I think she acclimates herself pretty well too, within the confines of what they're given to work with. Pretty decent.
I mean, yeah, none of them are terrible.
Right.
I mean, you know, they're all I would say. You know, I love Catherine O'Hara. Like she's great in the original. She's good here. None of them really have any like real
Standout moments.
Yeah, none of them really have anything to sink their teeth into, really. But they're all fine, average to fine. I think I would put Jenna Ortega's more as like average because she doesn't really get much to do other than like. Well, she has a plot point, and then she kind of gets drug along through the ending. So there's not a lot there. Do you buy Lydia's evolution after 36 years that she would just go from this kind of weird emo goth teen living in the house with her parents to now she's like a ghost hunter or a ghost medium of some sort and has like a television show? Is that what you would imagine? Do you buy it? You're all right with it?
Could kind of see that as maybe her path, possibly. You know, it seems like her relationship with her mother is kind of softened a little bit. She still doesn't really call her mom. She just calls her Delia. So there's still a little coldness there, but I guess within the parameters of what we're given here, it kind of works.
Yeah, the relationship she has with Delia is definitely softened. It's not as adversarial as it is in the first film. Like, I'm all right with what they do with Lydia, I guess, here. I mean, I never really thought about what that character would be doing 36 years later. So, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of, again, we always talk about, you know, doing new things. And, I mean, it is something new, but I just mean, like, I kind of would have wished she would have, like, evolved a little bit more in her looks of her character instead of looking exactly like she did in 1988 when Beetlejuice come out.
Time,
like, just update her look a little bit.
Still all dressed in black.
And still has the same kind of hair. And stuff. Just little stuff like that I think would have helped me a little bit, but it's probably not a big deal to anybody else other than me. Let's address the sex pest in the room here, Todd.
Oh, man.
I'm talking straight to you. No,
Wait a minute.
For those wondering, yes, registered sex pest Jeffrey Jones. He played Lydia's father, Charles Dietz, in the original film. He's one of those that guys. He was in the Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's one of those that guys. If you've seen his face before, you know who he's talking about. Insert picture here. The film does feature him in some kind of strange ways. He is involved. I would say he features too much.
He's kind of weird in a way.
Yeah, considering his sex pest status, I would say it's kind of weird he would be featured and shown at least in photograph form as much as he is. So tell people how Charles Dietz figures into all this, Todd.
So his death is actually the crux to what brings the Dietz clan back together.
Yeah.
And it's kind of conveniently, let us in on the fact that he died in he was in a plane crash, but that's not what killed him.
Yeah, he was on a bird watching trip.
Yeah.
Plane crashed in the ocean.
He survived that, but he was bitten in half by a shark.
Yeah,
conveniently,
his head to his
upper torso is gone because, hey, we can have a bottom torso running around. We don't have to look at the guy's likeness.
Yeah.
We'll get by that, but they still put his actual face and picture on his tombstone.
Which is a shark fin.
Yeah, it's a shark fin.
Okay. All right.
I get the joke there.
Yeah, I get you that.
But then he's also kind of in our picture we see in their home. I think it's after the funeral, like at his wake or something. He's right there. There's his photo, his actual photo. So are you trying to avoid the guy or are you not?
Yeah. And then some poor bastard had to go around because he's running around in the afterlife. He's in the land of the dead.
Trying to do his voice.
Yeah, some poor bastard had to imitate this sex pest voice and like kind of play that character a little bit. And I'm like, it's just, like you said, it is the driving force of the film, but I think he could have done it without having his face and everything in it as much. Just like he died, we're going to his funeral, and that's it. I mean,
it's like they couldn't make up their mind if they're avoiding him entirely, or are we going to include him a little bit, or what are we doing?
Exactly, and it just leaves you kind of feeling like not sure about this. And I thought they were going to do something a little bit funny because like his death is shown in like kind of like animated, like
Yeah.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer style,
Yeah.
like animation. And I thought they were going to, because like Delia is like, oh, his plane crashed, and you're like, okay, he died in a plane crash, and she's like, no, but he survived, and he was like, he was attacked by sharks, and I thought they were just going to keep doing it. It's like, oh, he survived, but he lost his leg, and then he went onto an island. And he was like, he was found by a tribe of cannibals who eat his right arm, and like just because he's a sex pest, like keep adding to his horrible death.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't. So I think that was kind of a little bit of a wasted opportunity there. But yeah, just it feels a little weird. It feels like they didn't really know what they were doing with that character, and I would have given his status currently and what he had done. I would think just pull back on him. I didn't need to see his face.
Yeah, avoid him entirely.
Yeah, just mention him. That's about enough.
In name only.
Speaking of mentioning, I mentioned Justin Theroux's Rory before. He's Lydia's scummy kind of manager / boyfriend.
Yeah.
Later on in the film, it's revealed he was just with her for basically married Lydia for the money. Because we can't have a Beetlejuice movie without people wanting to marry Lydia Dietz. We didn't have it in 1988. That was the crux of it. That is what this film drives around a lot, is Beetlejuice again trying to marry Lydia Dietz. More on old Roy's fate to come.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe, he's in this film too.
As well, yeah.
For some reason.
Why, I don't know.
I'm not sure why. He has absolutely nothing to do. He's a dead former actor. I think his name is Wolf Jackson. He's a dead former actor, and now he's like kind of like an afterlife cop, afterlife police detective.
Something like that, yeah.
And is that about right?
That's pretty much spot on of what he is, yeah.
I love Willem Dafoe, but I'm like, if you remove his character out of this film, it absolutely changes nothing. It would make no difference whatsoever if he was in. And again, I love Willem Dafoe, but if you take him out, nothing changes. Absolutely nothing changes about the movie. You could do completely without him, which is, again, looking at it from like a screenwriting perspective, then why do you need him? You don't need him. He doesn't really deliver exposition that much. I mean, he tells Beetlejuice about his ex-wife coming back and stuff, but then, again, he's completely useless and completely wasted. Such a talent here to have him on screen and completely waste him.
Exactly.
Another Tim Burton kind of alumnus pops up here. Danny DeVito pops up from a cameo in the very beginning of the film as a dead janitor, just around to spew some goo out of his mouth, because Danny DeVito loves being in Tim Burton movies and getting to spew goo or some kind of liquid out of his mouth.
Right.
Here, Todd.
Yeah.
So he pops up. He's actually the inciting force, I guess, that actually ends up partly responsible for bringing back Monica Bellucci's Dolores, which is Beetlejuice's ex-wife.
Somehow his floor buffer or waxer shocks her back into life or something.
Yeah, exactly. So Monica Bellucci, she's around as Beetlejuice's ex-wife, another female Tim Burton character who patches and sews herself back together.
Stitches into herself, yeah.
Yeah, she kind of puts herself back together, staples herself back together. We'll save her more on her contribution again, or lack thereof. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. And then we get to the Juice himself, Todd. Michael Keaton is back as Orenthal James Beetlejuice Simpson.
What?
Todd, thoughts on Michael Keaton's return to Beetlejuice after so long away?
You know, it's kind of difficult to acknowledge this because, I'm a big fan of Michael Keaton's. I've not seen, everything the man has made, but, a lot of his bigger projects I've really enjoyed. But it's just kind of, as we've hinted at a little bit earlier, I think this film was about 25 to 30 years too late. And, I think with some of maybe the script that he had to work with, some of the way the plot was in this movie, I think I may have got a couple more chuckles maybe out of it than you did, but in the end, it just it didn't really pan out. It just kind of was lacking.
Yeah, I've been seeing kind of stories with the media around this movie, and like I've heard him talk about it before, that he was born Michael Douglas.
Yes.
Of course, there was already a famous Michael Douglas around, right? So he's like, all right, I'll just be Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about changing his name to do it like Michael Keaton Douglas.
Michael Keaton Douglas.
This is Michael Keaton Douglas. This is not Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice.
This is Michael Keaton Douglas.
This is Michael Keaton Douglas as Beetlejuice. I think I kind of mentioned it to you, and I was kind of thinking about it last night. I feel like this is like when you're watching baseball and like an old pitcher takes a mound, and he's lost his fastball, and he's just trying to strike people out with some off-speed stuff, and he's just getting battered all around the ballpark. Right. That's what this felt like to me. It felt like he lost his fastball when it comes to the character. again, it's not a bad performance. I don't think there's a bad performance in the film. It's just not very funny or memorable to me.
Yeah, there's that one scene where I think it's where Lydia and Rory goes up to the model room in the attic, and she's kind of confessing, like, there's something I haven't told you that I didn't even mention in the group we were in. There's this afterlife demon that I've had problems with in the past. I've seen him again. He's back, and he's kind of like, it's just in your head. I'll prove it to you. He says Beetlejuice 3 times, and they get immediately sucked in. And that little scene where he's kind of like playing himself as a marriage counselor, and he's like, his gut starts flying out. He impregnates her, and her belly swells. She pops out a baby. Keaton kicks the baby. I'm like, hey, this is flying. It's a little bit kooky, a little bit harsh. He's kicking a kid. I'm like, hey, maybe we're recapturing some of that old magic, but it don't last long.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't last long. Yeah, it really. It just kind of wears thin after a while because there's nothing really. Like I said, you got more chuckles out of it than I did. I don't remember really laughing or chuckling at any Beetlejuice line.
Right.
And that's another problem with the film. The film's not very funny either. The comedy kind of misses a lot of the times. There's one genuinely funny moment that we kept talking about after the film. There's a point where I think it's Jenna Ortega. Is it Jenna Ortega?
I think it was her.
When she first makes it to the afterlife and she's waiting her turn and taking her ticket, she goes and sits on the couch, and there's like a completely like burnt up like Santa Claus, like somebody like a dad or something was playing Santa Claus and he was trapped in the chimney and burnt alive. And she's like looking at him, she's like, "Merry Christmas." He's like, "Merry Grandma." And
we laugh more than that at anything.
And then after the film, we're just like, "Merry Christmas." And that was generally like the funniest line to me. And I was telling you, and I don't know if anybody else has like talked about this on the internet, but I was just like, I looked at you after the film. I was like, is there any way we could tie this into that being Phoebe Cates' dad from the original Gremlins film?
Oh yeah,
because she tells her tragic backstory where he was just stuck in the chimney and broke his neck, but then they turned on,
lit the fire, started smelling something.
He was burning. I was like, could you connect the Beetlejuice universe now to the Gremlins universe?
Pretty
Any
cool.
way possible that's still Phoebe Cates' dad sitting there waiting? Because there's a whole rule in the afterlife is so backed up that they sometimes stay around for about 125 years before they can move on. Maybe that's him. Maybe that's Phoebe Cates' dad. That's what I was kind of thinking. Let's go through the story a little bit. So, Beetlejuice, we talked about Beetlejuice's ex-wife, Dolores. She's zapped back to life by Danny DeVito. She has the power to make the dead even more dead.
She sucks their soul.
She's the soul sucker. Now, I love a good soul sucker, if you know what I mean.
Whoa.
But, she again, it's another nebulous storyline of like, okay, she can make the dead even more dead. She sucks the soul out of them, turns them into little pancakes, and sometimes their eyes pop.
Right.
When they hit the ground. It's like a meat sack.
Cool little effect.
Yeah, it is.
I got to hand it to it.
It is. So Charles Dietz, again, he's dead. He's being buried back in Winter River. This is so we can go back to the Maitland house. We can name drop Adam and, was it Barbara? We can see the old covered bridge
where they died.
Where they died. Astrid at one point takes a little bicycle ride through the town. We can see some of that kind of stuff and get familiarized with that location again. Rory ends up proposing at like the worst time. He proposes at Lydia's dad's funeral. So she kind of begrudgingly agrees. And her and Astrid are already kind of estranged, so this kind of drives them even kind of further apart. And that's when she takes her little bicycle ride through town, and it ends up where she almost dies 3 or 4 times getting hit by cars. But she ends up crashing through the fence of some hot boy her age's house. He's up in his little tree house.
Yeah.
Who's this boy, Todd? What's he got going on?
So I believe his name was Jeremy. I'm sure what his last name
Jeremy
was.
Fraser.
Jeremy Fraser.
Yeah.
And like I say, she kind of crashes through his fence, runs right smack dab into his tree house. Mm-hmm. You kind of see a little bit of a spark between them, a little bit of a mutual interest.
Yeah, immediately.
Immediately.
Just because they're similar age, I guess.
And he kind of invites her back to his house one time, and you kind of see his parents, but you don't really see them.
The mom's in the kitchen, but her head's turned. The dad's watching TV. Yeah. You just see the back of his head, of course. And immediately I knew something. I knew what it was.
You kind of figure something.
You know what it was immediately. Yeah.
So he kind of takes her up to his room. He kind of happens to have that copy of like the Afterlife Guide. And he's like, oh, that's just something I picked up at a yard sale. Can't really figure out what it is, And, after the events of, the Halloween wedding, he's like, well, hey, ditch that and come hang out with me. We'll give out some candy, just kind of hang out. But,
Right.
They had no plans to give out candy. He wanted her just kind of up in his room, and they start dancing, kind of kissing, and they, realize they're floating in the air because he is a ghost.
Yeah. His mom is dead and stuff, we come to find out, but he's a ghost, and he's been trapped there for however many years or whatever, and he's a ghost, and he wants her help with something.
Yeah, and he tells her that he just kind of slipped getting out of his treehouse, fell and broke his neck.
Right.
But we kind of get the exposition from the real estate lady to Lydia that, hey, that house you dropped your daughter off at, that's a murder house.
Yeah.
That boy killed his mom and dad, and in escaping from the cops, ran up in that treehouse, slipped and fell and broke his neck.
Yeah, I think his dad had like a saw in his head or something, and didn't the mom have like an egg beater stuck in her eye
Kind
or
of
something?
egg beater,
something like that.
Something like a kitchen device.
Yeah, he murdered his parents and then slipped and fell and broke his neck. Yeah.
So his whole thing is like, Astrid, I need you to help me to come back to life. And you can do that by saying this incantation and opening this door to the afterlife. And, for doing it, you'll get to see your dad.
Yeah, because there's a plot point here we hadn't really talked about. So Lydia Dietz, before in the intervening years, after 36 years after the original, she married some hippie, saved the rainforest type guy.
Yeah.
The backstory is he was out in the Amazon trying to save the rainforest and ended up dying under mysterious circumstances. And so Astrid is kind of like, she's kind of another reason they're estranged. Astrid's a little bit pissed off at Lydia because she can see all these other ghosts, but you can't see her dad.
Can't see the dad.
So she thinks the whole ghost thing is bullshit. So she's a non-believer. So that's a little plot point too. To this is that about the dad and everything else kind of going on there, and that kind of factors into Jeremy's plan. He's exploiting that to be like, you can see your dad again.
Yeah.
Come over to the other side with me.
But he's really got her down there because it's like a life for a life or a soul for a soul. She's got to go down there and she's going to die and stay so he can be reborn and come back.
And you mentioned before there's a point where we see Beetlejuice early in the film, but after kind of reuniting once before, Lydia, she finds all this out. She sees that Jeremy has taken Astrid to the land of the dead. So she turns to none other than Beetlejuice himself. And she's
For help.
For help. And she's like, I will agree to marry you in exchange for you helping me save Astrid's soul, making sure that she comes back to life. And he makes her kind of like sign a contract, a wedding contract, a marriage contract to save Astrid. So that'll factor in later. So they head to the Afterlife train station to save her from boarding the train. They call it the Soul Train, Todd. Like Soul Train, like Don Cornelius.
The old
Soul Train.
The old TV show Soul Train.
And then when they mention Soul Train, of course, when you think Soul Train, like I'm of the age, I still think I'm like, oh, Soul Train, Don Cornelius, and I'm like, they're not gonna do that. That's cheap and it's stupid,
cheesy, corny.
Like I was thinking, okay, we're gonna see like maybe some kind of practical train set, and it'll be real creepy and moody and like very creative. No, they do it. They do the 1970s black exploitation disco joke, and it's just a big bunch of black people dancing around the train station like it's an actual Soul Train, and you got a black conductor like, get on board the Soul Train, all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
And they go back to it like, I think, was it like 3 separate times?
At least 2 or 3.
At least
and
2 or 3
the first time
times.
they're all dancing and they're doing, and it's like, this is not funny. It's stupid. It's a cheap, easy joke. You could have circumvented it like
something really creepy, really scary.
Yeah, like somebody, you could have been so creepy and scary, and somebody on a train be like, what do you expect, Don Cornelius? And then like, what I mean? Like, it's a fucking Soul Train to the afterlife. It's not the legit 1970s Soul Train. And it's cheap. And again, it's another comedy misfire here.
Yep.
Lydia ends up rescuing Astrid, and Beetlejuice, Jeremy here kind of, at this point in the movie, you really forgot about Dolores for the most part. Jeremy kind of turns into your big bad, you think, and then Beetlejuice just offs him by dropping him straight into hell.
Right into hell.
And he's like, see you, fucker. Yeah. He drops our F-bomb. We get our one PG-13 F-bomb, and he drops it here. And you're like, that just took all the danger out of his character and everything else. So he's just mostly becomes inconsequential too, because he's just dispatched so easily. There's no danger and there's no worry about what happens because he's just so nonchalantly just killed by Beetlejuice, basically.
Pretty much.
Like it just kind of happens out of nowhere. we kind of mentioned the Astrid's dad stuff. He also happens to just work at that train station.
Happens to be like right there at the ticket counter.
Happens to be there. So he ends up helping Lydia and Astrid. He's covered in piranhas, which I thought was clever because I mean they just mentioned he died in the Amazon.
They're flopping and twitching.
They don't mention exactly how he died. So it's like a clever way to kind of show he was in the Amazon. Died. You got these little floppy, like practical piranhas all over him.
Cool. Yeah, it was cool.
Little sounds, and it was cool, and it gets some good practical makeup effects and stuff. But again, another kind of largely inconsequential. He's like, I've been looking in on you. I know you can't see me, and you're like, how does that work? Like,
it's never explained why, but
but he helps him. He helps him get out of the out of the land of the dead and back to the land of the living. Another subplot. Delia has been trying to. She's come up with all these ways. She's trying to, I guess, basically commune with Charles's spirit, his dead body. She's trying to commune with him on the other side. So she's talking about doing some type of ceremony out by his graveside. And to do this, she has bought and purchased 2 supposedly defanged Egyptian asps. And she's going to take them to the graveside, and she's going to perform this ceremony with these defanged Egyptian asps. Of course, she doesn't check, and they're not defanged, and she immediately gets bit twice in the neck and immediately dies.
Dead as a doornail.
And immediately is sent to the afterlife, and it really, again, doesn't serve much of a purpose, and it's really kind of like shocking. She just dies and gets sent out of the film kind of like that quickly.
It's just like at this point they're just trying to figure out, we got to have Delia be doing something.
So we've got to figure out a way to keep her in the film.
Let's kill her, maybe.
Let's kill her and throw her into the afterlife because everybody else has kind of been there at this point. Let's throw her in there.
Let's get her down there too.
And so she's trying to like reunite with her sex pest husband, and to kind of skip forward. Again, because her story doesn't really serve any purpose, she does end up reuniting with the sex pest husband at the end of the film, which I have a question about that a little later too. But Lydia, Astrid, they're back. They end up back at the church where Rory's waiting for the old wedding. Beetlejuice and Delia, they end up crashing the wedding because she enlists Beetlejuice help as well. She makes a little kind of deal with him. Beetlejuice, he kind of injects Roy with, I guess, a truth serum. Was it? He it
was a truth serum.
Randomly walks up to him, injects him with some truth serum, and he starts spilling the beans. I don't really love you. I'm just in for the money. I knew I would get more money out of you as your husband than I ever would your manager. Yeah. Willem Dafoe and his YMCA cops, they kind of bust in. They're the next to crash the wedding. And then our last person to crash the wedding is Dolores. She shows up. She's ready to crash the wedding too. She's ready to find her ex-husband Beetlejuice. What happens from there, Todd? Take us through the ending here.
So basically, I think Beetlejuice kind of tries to put her on to Rory. He's like, hey, look at this guy. You know? And they kind of have a little glance towards each other, and you're like, hey, she's like, maybe,
Right.
Meanwhile, Astrid's kind of got that, afterlife spirit guide book, and she's kind of flipping through, and she kind of figures out how to open up the sandworm portal by drawing the hatch into the floor. Opens it up, sandworm comes through, immediately swallows the ex and Rory in one big gulp. They're gone almost as quickly as the ex showed up.
And it makes Dolores' character, again, completely inconsequential to the story. Because, she's there for maybe 90 seconds. She shows up, maybe. And she's dispatched immediately by a sandworm. And here's another Beetlejuice film ending where the sandworm comes in and wrecks shop, and that's the ending of the film. Right. That's how the original ended. Again, that's how this one ended, and it makes her character completely useless. That whole plot thread completely useless.
You actually made the point that her and Beetlejuice actually don't even exchange any dialogue.
No, they really have no dialogue. They have no scene together where they speak or anything.
He sees her and he's like, oh, fuck, but they block out that fuck because you only have one. And she's like, you're my beloved or you're my betrothing or something. Yeah. But they don't actually talk.
No.
Period.
Beetlejuice gives one backstory exposition.
In a foreign language.
Yeah, it's a subtitled scene where he's speaking like Spanish or something. Yeah. And we get to see their little backstory, but they have no actual real screen time together or dialogue. And it's really just, again, it's off-putting, and none of these plot threads go anywhere. It's like they're going on their line and they're just chopped off.
Yep.
And they just end abruptly. Jeremy ends abruptly. Dolores, she's just going on and in the background, and you're expecting some kind of nice scene at the end of the film, and hers is just abruptly chopped off at the knees, and her character is completely useless too. I'll kind of ask that too. Let's kind of go through these sequels too, because it's kind of not the sequel. Well, talking about the sequel, but talking about some questions about this sequel. Because the whole thing about the original that I think drew people to it was like the atmosphere of it. It was kind of creepy. It was a little unsettling. It had that early Tim Burton vibe where it's like you're not really ever always at ease. And there was a little bit of like, even though it could have some light moments, it had some kind of darkness to it. It had a little bit of dark moments where you always felt a little uneasy. It still had it had a well written kind of plot. It had dramatic stakes. You kind of felt for the Maitlands. The Maitlands they were your end to the story. You were kind of on the journey to them. You felt this beautiful like young couple killed in the prime of their lives, and you're with them through the film trying to figure out their journey. You're learning the rules of the land of the dead with them as they go, and there was suspense about the outcome of the film and what would happen.
Right
Here.
No.
There's no suspense. The sequel, it undercuts the plot every chance it gets. It undercuts the plot. And Monica Bellucci's character, she's listed as the main antagonist, but she barely makes again any difference to the plot. She should have been removed entirely, and you should have just had it centered around Jeremy. Jeremy and Astrid. That should have been the main antagonist, and the plot thread is just Astrid meeting him, a little bit more time spent developing their relationship. Oh no, he's a ghost, and then I'm going to help him. And then that's the third act of the film is Beetlejuice and Lydia saving Astrid from that fate, and Jeremy being the one. You don't need Dolores.
No,
you don't need that at all, Todd, and it just doesn't make sense. A big thing that people have been wondering about is how they would address what happened to the Maitlands from the original movie to now. It's stated that they just found some loophole.
And they kind of moved on.
What
was the loophole?
What was the loophole? How does that work? Can someone else exploit the loophole?
Right.
Because there's a loophole that's kind of exploited to get Lydia out of that contract that Astrid kind of finds in the book. But it's just kind of one of those hand-wavy things. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Michael Keaton's back. Don't worry about
Tim Burton's directing.
Yeah, don't worry about what happened to the Maitlands. It's again, like, I mean, just a little bit more service paid to that would have been nice because, it kind of goes back to the Charles and Delia thing. So, like, you see Adam and Barbara in the beginning. It's like it's told there's such a backlog in the afterlife that people can stay on Earth for like 125 years, and they're trapped at the house. And if they take a step outside the porch, they fall into Saturn with the sandworms.
Yeah.
But Delia goes right to the land of the dead and immediately finds Charles, and they are able to board the Soul Train and just move on.
Just like that. Just
like that.
Immediately. Fast track.
Yeah,
they had a fast pass.
I guess. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
Because again, the whole thing is built on there's such a backlog, and you stay there. I don't get it. Like, it just, again, it's one of those like, don't look. There's a Beetlejuice baby.
Look at this hand, not this hand.
Yeah, there's a
Sorry.
little Beetlejuice baby. We kind of talked about something else that I wrote down. It doesn't make sense. It's like, how do you suck a soul out of a dead person?
Shouldn't their soul already be gone anyway?
I guess. There's little plot holes and stuff that, like, some of them they go in levels of severity, and some you're like, okay, whatever, you can hand wave that a little bit. And then there's some of them like, okay, I think you should have thought this through a little bit more, like give us a little bit more to explain this situation away. A lot of the stuff we've talked about recently, we've talked about fan service. What did you think about the level of fan service here, Todd? What did you notice, and what did you think about it?
Well, I mean, the fact that the film exists at all is fan service.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And
if you want to boil it down,
there's things. There's like, the Harry Belafonte's Deo song, which is really the one that really
I asked you after the movie. I was like, does it even make, because they have Charles Dietz's funeral, and they have this like choir version of Deo singing at his funeral, like this like kind of somber choir version. And I asked you, I was like, that doesn't make sense in the context of the film. It wasn't like that was his favorite song ever.
Right.
It's just a way to feed that in there because that's a thing you remember.
That's the only one that really just kind of struck me as awful.
Yeah,
that was out of place.
Yeah.
You know, there's like that. I guess it's called like the I don't know, kind of the tentacle sculpture or whatever.
I wrote here. It looks like a thing you dip spaghetti
Yeah.
out of a pie in. Yeah,
But that's from the original where it actually came to life and was possessed, and I think wrapped somebody up inside its tentacles.
yeah. Because like Lydia, she's got all this money now. She donated like. Astrid School, they have a Lydia Dietz Art Center,
Right.
and some of Delia's sculptures are around one of those that spaghetti thing, you know, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we didn't really mention, like all the shrunken head guys. There now there's not just in the original. There's just like that one shrunken
There's
head
like
guy.
a whole team
There's
of
like
them.
a whole, and they work with Beetlejuice, or they're kind of enslaved by Beetlejuice. And when the first chance they get to like run away,
They're gone,
and they're running free in the real world. And you're like, again, how does anybody care or think about that? Or
Nothing's ever addressed about how they get put back or where they went. Or
I noticed one, Miss Shannon's School for Girls. That was something you see in the original.
Oh yeah,
Lydia's red wedding dress comes back from the original. We get in the original film there was Little Jane Butterfield. Now she's adult Little Jane Butterfield. She is now taking over her mom's place as the real estate agent for the area, and now she's got a little girl, another little daughter Jane. Is just repeating the cycle there. There's a lot of like licensed music in this. There's a lot of like big musical numbers. A few times.
Lot more than the original.
The big song from the film, I think, or the big musical number is like lip syncing Donna Summer's MacArthur Park.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. That's really all the ones that I noticed. I mean, how do you feel about the level of it here? I mean, I'm sure there's more, but like, how do you feel about? Did it feel? Is it too much? Is it enough? Just right? What do you think?
I think for me, and what kind of makes these a little bit more digestible or acceptable is this is just the second Beetlejuice film. This is not like our fifth and sixth Beetlejuice installment where like we've got like exact lines of dialogue and we're tying into Beetlejuice Begins. We're going to avoid like Beetlejuice the Resurrection, you know. It's just the second Beetlejuice film, so you kind of expect a little bit of that, and I don't think it's really too heavy-handed, other than that one funeral song, which just really seemed out of place. I know you got to try to work that back in somehow, but it was in a bad spot.
Yeah, but you don't have to.
You don't really have to. Yeah, that's true.
You can make a new scene. You can just have the MacArthur Park scene. You don't need the Deo scene.
Yep.
That's your new. Because
that was your new
literally
possession
before
scene.
The film, because we made fun of in the intro of this is like one of the things we talked about is like the fucking ads that were just constant before the film.
You're bombarded with ads.
Go to Denny's and eat Beetlejuice Afterlife menu. Go to Beetlemax, which is like CarMax, and I'm like, anytime you see that level of like advertising for one of these things, it always signals to me that this is like we need to funnel as much money back into this, or we use this money to funnel into the film because we couldn't get enough money normally to make it, or we need enough money from this ad revenue to cover what we think our losses are going to be on this bullshit. It's like when the 2016 Ghostbusters come out, it was the same shit. It was like everything. Get a cheesy biscuit at this place. And it was, I mean, and then there was like ads for women's yogurt in the DVD and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's just trying to get money back out of it to like either fund the project or cover your losses. And I'm like, it was really getting on my nerves. And we also sit there, I was like, all right, Todd, let's think about what are we going to see here? I'm like, there's going to be a new version of the Deo scene. There's going to be Delia's sculptures. And we just kind of sit there listing them, and we pretty much hit just about every one of them that we knew we would kind of see. And that's sad in its own way, because you kind of got to, again, we always want to see a little bit something new, be in the world and of the world, but just do something new in the world too. Yeah,
you could, like you say, just had the MacArthur Park, possession song, and that'd have been it. Yeah. There was no need to refer to Deo anymore. But no, they did.
All right, Todd, review time. Give us your score and final thoughts for Beetlejuice.
So in the end, I think Beetlejuice times 2. See what I did there?
Yeah, Beetlejuice times squared.
For me, I think the biggest sticking point to me for this whole film is it was just too many characters spoil the plot. I can think of, 2 right off the bat that should have never been, and that was Willem Dafoe's character and Monica Bellucci's character. Mm. And I could have even done without Rory. I think you'd have easily could have had that without Rory. Yeah. You could have just had the Dietz family proper, no Rory, and have been just fine.
Yep.
As we've kind of touched on earlier, I think, to be honest, I think this is coming about 25 to 30 years, a little bit too late.
Yep.
I think with a leaner script, and I think with those said characters omitted, I think you could have possibly had, maybe in my opinion, a better time with this movie, maybe a better outcome. And I don't really know how this is tracking money wise or critic wise, but whether we see a Beetlejuice times 3,
Yeah.
who
Right now,
knows?
reviews are fairly favorable. I don't know how that's going to,
Okay.
go to box office, but it's fairly
It's,
favorable.
it was a little bit too much crammed in here, with a little bit maybe too much of the fan servicey stuff that we've kind of come to expect from these, and that's why I've decided to kind of put my score at a 5. I think it was just kind of mediocre.
Yeah. I think it's boring. It's forgettable. The humor missed the mark the majority of the time for me. It's overstuffed with characters. Take out Willem Dafoe. Take out Monica Bellucci. Make Jeremy, if you're going with that storyline, make Jeremy the focus of the film.
Yep.
It ultimately recycles plot points from the original with another wedding to Lydia, another sandworm barging in at the end, being the Deus Ex Machina to end the film.
Yep.
Basically, pretty much. It lacks creativity that you had in the 1988 film. There's not much creativity. We talked about too. None of his films since like 2000 have really felt like Tim Burton films, but this one doesn't feel like a Tim Burton film and what you would, that classic Tim Burton feel to it.
I mean, you go like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Batman, and I even include Batman Returns in this. I like Batman Returns.
Even his weirder stuff like Ed Wood and Mars Attacks.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't feel creative like it used to be. And I mean, he fell off a long time ago as a director. But for the pluses, though, I would say practical effects are great.
They are good. They are good.
You get kudos for using mostly practical effects here, and the makeup effects are great.
Yeah.
A good soundtrack. We weren't actually subjected to too much Danny Elfman original score.
Right.
It was a lot more like reliance on like licensed music, and I think the fan service stays tolerable.
It does.
It doesn't cross that line for me. So if you add it all up, to me, you get a very underwhelming and uninteresting sequel made way too late by a director that peaked in the 90s, Todd. Let's just call it like it is.
Okay.
It earns a few points for me for its practical effects and its restraint shown to not overuse its main character.
True.
For that, I give Beetlejuice a 5 out of 10, which ranks it as mediocre as well. That's it for this episode, Todd. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. Send us an email and get in touch with us on social media. Towel Cakes will return. We want to thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye, guys.
See you guys.